let's say you're not interviewing for a new manager's position, but you're looking at how do I improve current managers, what ways and assessments can help me with this process. Well, we're going to talk about two of them today. One of them is a development report, and the other is a 360. Again, when you look at the development report, this is a report that you would be giving your current manager to identify what they need to work on to improve themselves. And that's a function of really nailing down basically their effectiveness on these 10 competencies that we've already mentioned. So let's look at the coaching and developing others. Again, that is a very hot topic within mortgage banking, and where this report basically helps you as a supervisor sitting down with the manager would essentially give the evaluation to the employee. The employee would be looking at and basically reviewing what's been his performance versus what essentially is needed in that position. With the coaching and developing others, just in this example, we're showing the same issue. If you notice, the individual has two issues: the need to be liked and positive about people. Those issues have been identified where the employee is being told, well, okay, this is the concern, and as you can see in the evaluation component in the report, we're talking about and telling that person that the concern is, for instance, in the first bullet, relatively low need to please others may interfere with the development of a close coaching relationship. So one way the report's being used by many companies today is to improve that coaching conversation with the individual manager by telling them, okay, here's what we've identified that you yourself have to work on. And that's part of what we'll talk about later in a few minutes. I mean, how do you work upon this issue? And that's an issue that really can be addressed through personal coaching. So when you look at the developmental side of it, that's really looking at the individual manager that presently is in the position and then comparing to what we are saying is essentially the model for that position, which is what the pre-hire assessment and the development report is talking about. But now let's go to the next phase, that what you would do with a current employee that is a manager is looking at a 360. What's shown on the slide here is we took the competency of managing a team, again, the same competency that's in the pre-hire component is also within the developmental report, and so now we're looking at managing a team, again, from a 360 standpoint. A 360 is really defined as peers evaluating the manager. That would be other branch managers evaluating the manager. It would also be their supervisor. And then the third part is the direct reports. This is obviously a very powerful tool, and certainly we use it in our consulting when we are looking at the effectiveness of the managers by having a 360 performed on them. So again, what you're seeing in the 360, the same profile where the particular personality traits are listed, but now we're going to look at what did these three different groupings have to say about that particular competency. And so if you look at coaching and developing others, we're saying that, again, three people that are giving an input, and that input is from obviously the most important group is the direct reports, the people that are managed by the manager. Then you also are getting an evaluation by the peers, and you're also receiving it by your supervisor. So the report is showing you basically in the first box on the right-hand side, that's really a summary box looking at what was your score from 1 to 5 on that competency, and then where did you fit from your own evaluation of yourself in relationship to basically the other groups that are also evaluating you. And as you can see in this case, the person, not surprisingly, evaluated his coaching and developing others on a scale of 1 to 5 but that isn't really what people basically reported to them, or were individuals that were peers or the supervisor rated the individual. So this can be a really wonderful tool for getting a real glimpse at how do the people, in other words, what's the evaluation of people that work day to day with that particular manager on that competency. And as you can see, if you look at the box below, we're asking them, these individuals, the peers, the supervisors, and the direct reports, to really make a determination and rank the person. We're looking at this particular second box. The first box is the summary box, which is a numerical listing of totaling of how basically the manager got reviewed in total. And that summary box is the output for what happens in the grouping that's below it, that is asking, in other words, 9 specific questions regarding the coaching and developing of others' competency. So if you look at, again, the types of questions that the 360 is asking, the direct report, the peers, or the supervisors, has to do with, for instance, if you look at number 7, we're asking, is that person supportive? Again, when you look at the summary component, the individual manager rated themselves as being obviously on the high scale, again, being at 0.5, as being very supportive, right? But when you actually look at, where the other people, the direct reports, the supervisors, and the peers, were they evaluating the person the same, that's basically what's essentially being determined. So again, we're taking that particular competency, coaching and developing others, and then we're defining it by 9 questions, starting with number 1. Has valuable knowledge or experience where it's been shared, in a coaching setting? And so again, we're going through each one of those questions. The person's getting rated on a scale of 1 to 5, and then that summary ends up being what's at the top of the box. So each one of the 10 competencies basically will be defined this way. And really, what's important about what the 360 is doing for you is that it's giving you a real insight. What do the direct reports, in particular, is the most important group. It's telling you what the people think of the manager that has that they report to. Obviously, the input from the peers and the supervisor are also part of that report, but the reality is the direct reports certainly have a lot different view than when you look at how the own manager actually rated themselves. Again, the 10 competencies would look like this based upon whatever is the input that these individuals have given regarding that particular manager. So the plus side of it is that for the manager that really wants to know what is the experience that his employees or her employees are having, this really is a great way to show you that. In my experience with doing these 360s with managers, usually what you end up seeing is that the good managers love these types of instruments. Typically, the managers that have a difficulty managing a staff may not like to see the input that the individuals basically have given. We have a question that I'd like to answer. It says, does a strong need to be liked make strong performance management more difficult? Again, great question, and again, it's defined by where does that trait basically fall within. But a strong need to be liked, typically that's not a trait that's from a producer's standpoint, what makes them resilient is that they really typically don't have that strong need to be liked. So they could be effective as a producer, but when it comes to managing, you have to have a more normalized component of it. Again, you don't want to be one of the guys, but you have to have just a more normalized version, so therefore you can effectively be sensitive to basically the people that you are managing. So again, in particular traits, when you see that, when you look at the producer side, that's a really great thing to have. but when you look on the manager side, it needs to be actually more normalized. So when you look at, we looked at coaching and developing others, let's look at how this particular manager was rated on managing a team. Again, managing a team, what we are saying, again, that's one of the competencies that you need to be effective as a sales manager in mortgage banking. And again, when you look at the right-hand box on the top, that's a summary of really the three groups that have reviewed you. The first being your supervisor, the peers, and the direct reports, and you actually review yourself. And basically, this particular, when you look at how the manager rated themselves on a scale of 1 to 5, they basically, in this case, said the person, they rated themselves like a 4.5. Again, when you look at the subsequent group, they've rated them lower is what this really comes out to. And so what were they rating the manager on when it came to managing a team? They were rating them on the questions that are listed in the box here. In other words, the question of, what is the strength and weakness of that particular manager as far as managing a team is concerned. What we're talking about is that basically, does the manager have a desire to lead or direct others and exerts the effort to do so? Again, that was something that all of those groups basically rated the person in a positive way. But let's look at, again, some of these other questions. They're very particular for the competency of managing a team. Again, it gives you a real snapshot, in this case, similar to the coaching one, that the individual, they rated themselves much higher than what actually individuals that were supervised or basically from a peer's perception of that individual manager. So the 360 is, again, a wonderful way to get an insight into really the evaluation that the manager is receiving from the direct reports. Likewise, on the development report, the manager is being really, competencies are being measured up to what is basically the successful managers in mortgage banking. 360 is actually getting an insight into the individual's performance in relationship to people that he actually supervises. So you can see that these are important tools in the evaluation of effective managers. We have a couple resources for you. We certainly, I've mentioned before, we have a hiring and coaching ebooks that you might want to check out. We also have articles, and on my weekly sales blog, I handle many of these types of questions, so you might want to sign up for that. We're also giving the attendees, one, free pre-hire to try this out on your managers, and certainly just let me know about that. We will be having another webinar May 14th and we'll be sharing our research on integrity and the loan officer position. So never hire a low integrity originator again. Certainly sign up for that. There's limited seating. Thank you for joining us today. We certainly appreciate you coming. And certainly if there's any other questions that you might have, certainly email me and I'd be glad to answer them. Thanks a lot and have a great week. Bye-bye.